Welcome back to the Krown crypto channel on this glorious Friday morning over here from a very boring and uneventful week, despite CPI, despite all these macroeconomic, not events, but data coming out. And once again, it shocks me most that the macro experts just want to really focus on these sort of things, and they just have not been moving the markets for Bitcoin specifically and cryptocurrencies by extension for quite some time now. For traditional markets, a little bit different there. Those markets actually been, dare I say, a little bit more easy as well. But ultimately, the focus in this video today is on Bitcoin and kind of the trajectory for October/November. Anyways, other than that, I want to say a massive thank you for the overwhelming support on Twitter for that little feud with good old Cringe Lord. That was fun times, man. It is pretty silly, I will say, especially now that he's just starting to straight up lie, but fair enough. That's what you do when you're very confident. Now, don't you? And I know that he watches these videos as well, so shout out to you, sir. Honestly, personally, I hate all this shit talking. And luckily, in just 6 weeks, the shit talking ends. The shit talking ends and the fun begins. Well, at least for me. Anyways, let's just jump right into the charts right over here. Starting off with first, the daily statistics for Friday. It's pretty, well, not interesting, actually. Well, maybe it is interesting, depending upon your disposition. Bullish rate for Fridays for Bitcoin specifically have been about 50, not about, but quite literally 50%, meaning it's, a coin flip basically. Could go up or could go down. It could also go sideways. Crazy analysis. Riveting analysis, Sir Krown. Amazing. I'll tune in tomorrow for, maybe a little bit more of a bearish take on Saturday. Anyways, because it is a coin toss right here, I do want to present that the average for the bullish days versus the bearish days is actually on the more significant side, I would say, a little bit above 2% for both. So if we were to look at essentially the ranges for that, that would give us a range to the upside at around 27,300, let's say, to the downside at what, 26,200. I do lean a little bit more to the downside in the more near term, as we've been saying this past week. However, in the more medium to long term, maybe near the end of October, beginning of November, I guess now that we're kind of heading into the heart of October, I do still think that Bitcoin it's not that it's bullish. It's also not bearish, but it's more bullish, likely put in a major low within this region right here. If I was draw the old LARP lines out, maybe something like this. And that would just imply more sideways. More sideways within this range is going to be considered better for the boo laws over the more long term. Anyways, getting into it right now for relevant to the more near term, there are several things that do suggest another short term move to the downside. We do see 1, 2, 3 drives of hidden bearish divergence on the 2-day time frame right here on CME. And if we go to the 5-day time frame, I believe that there is a phantom drive, of regular bearish divergence. So short term and also, pretty nasty, not nasty, but a pretty obvious rejection of that white 200 moving average that Bitcoin continues to live under ever since the dump bull began in August of 2023. Well, of this year, basically. Anyways, on spot price action, similar things, basically. If we look at this, again, this one's actually already confirmed that that phantom drive of bearish divergence. And by the way, I should say with phantom drives, these ones that kind of cut through on non-successive or non-consecutive highs, they are not usually death sentences. They are range sentences is what I usually see them work as. So again, somewhere back down around 26,000 bucks, maybe a little bit lower, into like the mid 25s, but I wouldn't necessarily be calling like a major breakdown from this. I mean, for what it's worth, which I actually put a lot of weight on, the 5-day time frame still maintains the silver cross, as does, I believe, the weekly as well. So playing within this range right here, with about a $28,000 high versus about a 25.5, low side of the range. It's going to be considered more or less constructive on a higher low as Bitcoin kind of continues on its way sideways. Anyways, moving on now, we can see that the HBDR still showing the same thing as yesterday, meaning that I will be wrong, or at least that sort of short-term bias towards downside continuation will be wrong if Bitcoin can reclaim the average of the range, which is 27,500. Above there, Bitcoin very likely makes its way back above 29,000 bucks. Probably even closer to 30,000 bucks if I had to guess, but for right now, it would technically speaking favor the downside in the more near term. Stochastic momentum for the more shorter term timeframes is also of that same nature. 28,000 bucks is the daily pivot. Until then, momentum remains to the downside. 12-hour time frame is going to be showing also downside below 27,000. 6-hour time frame is going to be showing actually upside above 26.8. And I should actually say that the 6 and the 12 are both in kind of the critical zone already. So maybe a bit of hopium right there, as is the 4-hour actually. So maybe a little bit more hopium in the more near term. Maybe Bitcoin does try a little bit of a bounce. Don't really have strong opinions on this right now. But the pivot for the 4-hour is 26,800 basically. Kind of exactly where Bitcoin is at right now. And the hourly is pivoted at what do you know? Fucking 26,850 as well. Anyways, other than that, I did want to point out one thing. Okay, so it's a boring day when I get into shit like this, but well, let's just get into shit like this, because why not? Which chart do I want to show this on? Maybe this one right here. All right. Let's get rid of all these nasty drawings. And, if I'm going over this price action right here, what is it reminiscent of to me? And I'd be curious to hear other people's thoughts as well. Not that, either of our opinions really does matter. At the end of the day, price action does what price action does. But if I'm looking at this chart right here, what does this remind me of? Not just from a sentiment perspective, but also a price action perspective and structure perspective as well. Well, in this case, I would say that this price action right here greatly resembles what was going on right here after the black swan of 2020, right? So when the black swan of 2020 happens, obviously Bitcoin had these really violent moves, putting basically a 50% move to the downside right here, but again, that was a black swan, and black swans are outliers, not just from a event perspective, but price action perspective as well. And realistically, when you actually kind of, if you were to go to a higher term time frame and go on a line chart, it basically looked like this, like just kind of sideways through there. Nothing really important happened. The dump was essentially reclaimed as soon as it happened. I mean, over the course of the next 2 months, the next month and a half, Bitcoin was basically right back around where it started dumping from, and in hindsight, that is what, I mean, it was like a nothing. It's like a nothing, right? And in this case over here, we haven't had a black swan just yet. Bitcoin is now living through multiple wars, I guess, between Israel and now you got the Ukrainian war, or you have the Ukrainian war, now you have the Israeli war as well. We haven't really seen anything like this, but generally speaking, I guess the closest thing was actually the bank failure over here. But generally speaking, you can see that Bitcoin put in these constructive rallies. It just takes time, takes a lot of time. Again, for reference, this constructive consolidation period over here started basically in the beginning of May and lasted until middle of October. So I need to count this out because I'm an American. I don't know my months, but okay, so May, April, no, is that how it goes? May, June, July, August, September, October. So about 6 months. 6 months. I mean, that's a long time, right? When did Bitcoin to kind of wedge itself in this area over here? Starting in about March, late March. So basically April, I would say, basically April. If we were to kind of compare this like to like in a sense. So let me try this again. What comes after April? May. April, May, June, July, August, September, October. So it's actually from a time perspective relatively similar as well. I should have known that because literally this one started in like April and this one started in May, and May is after April, blah, 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 blah. But Americans, so don't really know these sort of things or don't really think about these things in a more complex sense. Anyways, so what would that imply? That would imply that that Bitcoin, still holds these lows right here, blah, 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 kind of the same thing that we're looking at before. And we do have other things in the background that do suggest that as well. I mean, again, the hash ribbons indicator still is, that's still valid. It hasn't been negated just yet. And by the way, one of them happened over here as well before this rally in 2020 as well. So, as long as Bitcoin's above there, I'd say that that's still one of the things kind of suggesting that this is, of that accord. And then also, I think we had another couple things as well, but they are escaping my mind right now. And I don't really want to go too deep into the what if drawer because I already hate, looking at fractals like this amazingly highly esteemed piece of analysis right here. Fractals work until they don't. is basically how it works. Yeah, price action can be fractal, absolutely. But just copy and pasting and price action from one to the next is a fool's errand and unlikely to work in the long term. I'm also not saying that Bitcoin's going to go on a rally to new all-time highs from here as well. I don't think that that's what's happening. I think that Bitcoin, is at best range bound for the next year. at best case scenario, in my opinion, would be somewhere in the mid 45s to the upside. Worst case scenario to the downside, let's say this area does break over here. I think maybe Bitcoin comes down to like 23 or 23.5, something like that. But hey, as long as that 25.5 pivot holds, I'm still going with that as the most likely thing to be happening. Short term, yeah, probably does trade at the downside. But just like this area over here, where all sorts of things happen. I remember like BitMEX got sued or arrested or whatever. Who knows? Initial dump off and then just no continuation from that. And I kind of feel like that's how this is operating over here as well. Initial dump, no continuation after that. So yeah, I think this is a good place for me to be leaving off. I want to be signing off right there. How about that? Catch me outside. How about that? And I will catch you hopefully tomorrow. As always, wish you the best of the best. Take care. Much love. And again, major thank you for the support on Twitter. That has been absolutely amazing and just really cool to see. So massive appreciation for that. And hope to see you soon. Take care. Goodbye.